Harry Potter, Turf Queen. That's right. It seems like there's been a new development with J.K. Rowling. J.K. Rowling has decided J.K. Rowling has decided that apparently Nazi Germany had nothing against trans people, and that it's delusional to think that they did. Let's watch. Let's see. Let's see. Wizarding news. Just J.K. Rowling here denying what the Nazis did. No big deal. No big deal. So there's this message. The Nazis burned books on trans healthcare and research. Why are you so desperate to uphold their ideology around gender? And also, because there's been this whole gender institute that have been liquidated by the Nazis. The forgotten history of the world's first trans clinic. The Institute for Sexual Research in Berlin would be a century old if it hadn't fallen victim to Nazi ideology. So there's been a whole trans clinic before the war, and it's been the victim of the so-called paragraph 175, because, and this gets tricky, because Nazis simply treated trans people as gay people. Okay? According to Nazis, trans people were simply gay people. So the mistreatment of gay people includes in its umbrella the mistreatment of trans people, naturally. So let's see. Not banned. Not you. Not yet, anyway. J.K. Rowling, how? How did you type this out and press send without thinking, I should maybe check my source for this, because it might have been a fever dream. Okay. Let me check if it's a fever dream. Nazis burning books. 6th of May 1933, looting of the Institute of Sexology, Holocaust Memorial Day Trust. On the 6th of May 1933, the Institute of Sexology, an academic foundation devoted to sexological research and the advocacy of homosexual rights, was broken into and occupied by Nazi supporting youth. Several days later, the entire contents of the library were removed and burned. Book burning after looting of the Institute of Sexology. The institute was initially occupied by the German Student Union, who were a collective of Nazi-supporting youth. Several days later, on the 10th of May, the entire contents of the library were removed to Berlin's Bebelplatz Square. That night, along with 20,000 other books across Germany, they were publicly burned in a symbolic attack by Nazi officials on their enemies. The institute was founded in 1919, and it had been set up by Magnus Hirschfeld, a world-renowned expert in the emerging discipline of sexology. During its existence, thousands of patients were seen and treated, often for free. The Institute also achieved a global reputation for its pioneering work on transsexual understanding and calls for equality for homosexuals, transgender people, and women. Hirschfeld himself was a passionate advocate for homosexual rights and had long appealed for the repeal of paragraph 175, the law that criminalized homosexuality in Germany. So I guess according to J.K. Rowling, all this is just a fever dream. All this amounts to is a fever dream. And if you're ever even thinking about typing out a message or a post about this on Twitter and pressing send, maybe you should check your sources because it might have been just a fever dream. Interesting, but I guess it goes on. I guess it just continues. Let's see, J.K. Rowling. Men defining what a woman is, what women should and shouldn't fear, what women should and shouldn't say, what rights women should be fine with giving up, and of course, what constitutes real misogyny. Get a bloody mirror. That's real misogyny, looking right back at you. This is it. Joanne, it's not hard to Google. Try it sometimes. Luring the Institute of Sexology. I would suggest you to start thinking critically instead of misusing information on Google. Misusing? So it's false. It's a little insulting to think JKR lacks a little light Googling. She has done the solid research. Has she now? Jesus, that is a poor response. Not everything on Google is factual or true. I once had a discussion with a colleague about hepatitis C. She Googled it and came up with nothing, therefore would not believe me. Oh, people are denying that ever happened. Oh, they're asking for sources while not this. Wow. In a spot of Holocaust denial, are you? Hardly surprising. Nazi pals galore. Muted, disinterested in replies. If anyone needs to sue me or something, DMs are open. What? Okay. So yeah. But that's not all, apparently. Let me check something. Because that's not all. So before I move on to more about this topic, Interesting. I haven't seen that before. So there's more. There's another link that I've been amazingly given. Let's see. There's more. Oh, she's really dying on this hill. Thread on the persistent claims about trans people and the Nazis. 1. Trans healthcare and the Nazis. The LGBTQ plus lobby likes to claim trans people were a key target of the Nazis. They weren't. In fact, trans healthcare was pioneered by a champion of eugenics and a surgeon who designed experiments at Dachau. His victims there were not trans. Wait, but trans healthcare was pioneered by the creator of this institute, by Magnus Hirschfeld, not by some Dachau doctor. That is where the trans healthcare was sort of pioneered in Germany. That is the whole point. That is why it was burned, among other things. And let me remind you, the Nazis simply saw trans people as gay people. That Nazi Germany did not distinguish between gay people and trans people. A trans person was simply a gay man, according to Nazi Germany. That's it. A gay man. And if the trans woman liked women, that would be just a man with a fetish, I guess. That's it. Nothing more. Who is Malcolm Clark? This is the person. TV science document producer. I also campaign against gender ideology and puberty blockers. Tweets are personal. My latest blog explores a century of gender affirming care to show how transgender identity and multiple personality disorder have always been entangled. A highlight in the story of the woman who believed she had a penis. It was always erect. What? I stayed up late waiting for any evidence to disprove my threads on the myths of the LGBTQ plus lobby tells itself about quack eugenics Magnus Hirschfeld. Oh, there you go. Or the alleged importance to the Holocaust of the trans community. Diddly squat, what a bunch of liars. Night night. Even a surface level of knowledge of the Nazi persecution of queer people shows. No, mate, only a surface level knowledge of the Nazi persecution supports the disgraceful attempts of the LGBTQ lobby to purloin the Holocaust. Is that so? I have a book here. I have a very interesting book here to share with all of you. I've discussed this book on stream before. I like it a lot. It is called Them, Homosexuals During the Second World War. And that is an interesting book because it demonstrates a few things. It talks about a few things. Most importantly, it talks about two major topics. It talks about the fact that the LGBTQ plus people were persecuted via the 175 paragraph, and that paragraph had existed all the way back in The German Empire, it made being part of the LGBTQ plus illegal. It criminalized gay people and any other sort of non-heteronormativity. It continued into the Weimar Republic, where a huge battle was raging in order to get rid of this harmful paragraph. And then it continued into the Nazi regime, which expanded on the paragraph 175. So the book describes the way people who were gay, trans, or non heteronormative in any way, how they were arrested, often killed in the concentration camps where they were kept, and branded with the symbol of the pink triangle. They were actually one of the first victims of the Nazis. The second topic of this book is how, after the war, because we live still in highly bigoted societies, victims, the LGBTQ victims of the Nazi regime, were actually swept under the rug. And the big lie was that the number was insignificant and that they sort of deserved their own treatment. That the LGBTQ plus people sort of brought this fate upon themselves because of their predatory predisposition. And I have a great quote from the book that is explicitly about this topic. Over 10 years ago, I took part in a public meeting which was about the history of one of the most important places of memory in Poland. There were 30 of us in the room, more or less. A man was giving a speech. We shall call him the caretaker of the institution which we visited. After the speech had ended, question and answers time began. Apart from the classic set of questions about the importance of memory, the cost of upkeeping the museum, or respect to those who are leaving, of the witnesses who are leaving this world, there was a topic of one particular group of prisoners appeared. A man with a pink triangle. I do not remember what the question to the caretaker was exactly, but I will never forget the answer. I heard that the group of the victims for now has not been commemorated, that their memory has not been enshrined for now. And that is because it was a pretty small group. Most of the people arrested were Germans, and also the topic seems to be quite problematic because there were accusations of them committing sexual crimes against other inmates. In this situation, said the caretaker, it is hard to even call them victims. Number, nationality, violence. Those three assumptions followed me from the beginning of my studies. A small number of Germans who sexually abused and abused other inmates in German Nazi penitentiary centers. That is how in Poland, men who were arrested by the paragraph 175 were framed by and the 175 paragraph sort of branded homosexual relations. They were alien. They were sexual predators. They were pedophiles. And there were not many of them. For these three reasons, their history was not really looked into. Nobody remembered. They were not treated as victims of the Nazi system. And those who were survived were sort of never mentioned. There was an air of silence around those who survived. Even if they left testimonies outside of Poland, nobody cared for their voices to reach Poland. Even if after the war they actually visited places of memory, nobody used their testimonies. Those three assumptions have set the discourse about all people, all non-heteronormative people that were persecuted during World War II. In Poland, such things and such people did not exist. There was nobody to commemorate. There was no point to commemorate. The history of the non-heteronormative people during World War II is still a topic of taboo. 75 years after the end of the war, in Poland, there are practically no publications about them. It is hard to find even small fragments or even any small publications. It is as if the pre-World War II society of Poland were 100% heteronormative. Let's end it here. So as you can see, even though not exactly Polish, and I have no idea how the attitudes towards the non-heteronormative prisoners of Nazi Germany formed in different countries than Poland, I can say that J.K. Rowling very comfortably fits into the thing that has been described about the Polish landscape of how people who were tried on the paragraph 175 were branded, were framed as a minority group, literally not many of them. They were mostly German. They were sexual predators. It's difficult to even call them victims. Like when I saw this tweet of J.K. Rowling, that it had to be a fever dream, that any trans people were persecuted by the Nazi regime, it reminded me of this book precisely. It reminded me of this exact fragment of the book. It reminded me that when you deal with a group that you do not like, when you deal with a group that you are sort of, that you have prejudice against, it is very easy to frame them as a group that has never been persecuted before, to claim that, to say that the Nazis persecuted that group would be a fever dream. And of course, there's this person that also joined in on it, Malcolm Clark, that says that it's just the workings of the LGBTQ plus lobby that claim that any persecution of trans people happened during World War II. Sources, by the way, this person said by the way, that there's no sources. Malcolm Clark. No sources, it's crickets. Where is it? If you'd like to read more myth busting of the fake history that LGBTQ plus lobby insists on making up, then why not subscribe to my blog? Trans agenda. Sources. Luckily, because where's the tweet where this person says that there's just no sources? It's crickets. I stay up late waiting for any evidence to disprove my threads on the myths of the LGBTQ plus lobby. It tells itself about the quack eugenics Magnus Hirschfeld. Diddly squat. What a bunch of liars. Night night. So let's see. This person says there's no evidence, no sources. Thankfully, I'm pretty sure, as any respectful book, this book actually names its sources. There's even a section called sources. How interesting. Sources 323. Let us see. Let us see. Sources. Archive materials. Archiv Gedenstätte Buchenwald. Photographs of inmates. The documentation of ex-inmates. Paul Baranyai, Wilhelm von Braun, Anton Horvath, Johann Horvath, Stefan Horvath. The letters of the transported inmates. Archiv Gedenkstätte Esterwagen. The documentation of former inmates. Peter Steinhoff. And so on and so forth. Various archives. The archive of the Institute of National Memory in Warsaw, which I might just go and dig up to present those findings on stream, to sort of show that actually there is some evidence to these claims. There does seem to be some evidence. The archives of the Institute of National Memory in Krakow, in Poznań, in Radom, in Wrocław, in Kraków. There seems to be a lot. There does seem to be quite a lot of the evidence. In Kalisz, the National Archive in Kalisz, the National Archive in Katowice. There are a lot of sources to this book. A whole list. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. 30 pages of listed sources for these claims about how the LGBTQ plus was treated during World War II, about the pink triangles. But according to Mr. Malcolm Clark, there simply is no evidence. There's simply no evidence. It's impossible to find. There is none. And according to one author, J.K. Rowling, believing in it, that there's been any persecution against trans people during the war, during the rule of the Nazi regime, that is just a fever dream, apparently. So apparently I can just take this book, this very well sourced book, and throw it in the trash. It's just a fever dream. It's just the LGBTQ plus lobby at work. It's just the lobby. How fascinating is that? It's just the lobby at work. So there we go. We have done our mandatory trans topics. So I can now claim my title of the trans streamer again. Because so far I've been a fake trans streamer. I've done a bad job of being a trans streamer. But now that I've covered 3 trans-related topics in a row, I can claim my title back of the biggest Polish trans streamer. And hopefully I've even added something of use to this whole topic.